Okay, I'm going to try and explain this ruffler to you. I'm still pretty new at it myself, but I will attempt to show you how I figured it out. There's a lot of options on one of these rufflers. This top bar right here, it lifts up and you can move it around. What that means is, number one means you're going to get a ruffle with every stitch. If you move it over to 6, that means you'll get a ruffle or a gather every 6 stitches. And then the biggest mark is 12, so that means that every 12 stitches you will get a ruffle or a gather. It also has the option of a star down here, which means you can straight stitch with this ruffler on your sewing machine. You know, with these things it's hit and miss, but they are a time saver. But the accuracy leaves a lot to be desired. There may be a lot nicer models out on the market, but like I said, I only paid $7.50 for this just to give it a try. Okay, so those are your settings for how many ruffles you want. This little screw here, when it goes all the way tight, that means you get the tightest ruffle possible. The more you move it to the left, the looser and smaller your ruffle's going to be, and by the time you unscrew it almost so that's flush, you end up with just the tiniest little gather. It's not even a ruffle. So let's go ahead and leave it in the tightest ruffle position so you can see what I mean. What this does is, if it's when this goes on your crossbar just like it does with a walking foot, and every time that thing moves up and down, it pushes this metal bar here in and out, which causes the fabric to ruffle on its own. So when you move it to every 6 stitches, there is a dial of I guess you'd call it a cog, and it'll only push that metal bar up once every 6 stitches. So when you're doing that, you'll hear a click, click, click noise that is not moving that metal bar. So you just hear that clicking, so that it only will push it up on and make a ruffle every 6 stitches. So let's go ahead and stay at 1 for now. So that's the ruffle size. That's how many ruffles per stitch. And under here you have some guide bars. I tried doing ribbon on the smaller bar, but this device is set up so that you can do a flat piece of fabric underneath and sew your ruffle on at the same time to save a step in your stitching. I haven't tried that method yet because I'm still learning just how to do the ruffling part. But I have tried these little feeds here to keep the fabric even with the so I can get the gather at the top of the piece of fabric. When you're using your needle position, you always want to be center position. You can go 1 click either side, but anything more than that and you're going to hit that needle's going to hit that bar and break. So you always want to, if you just get in the habit of staying in the middle position, needle position, you'll be fine using this. So when you go to put it on your machine, take off everything, including your foot holder on your machine. Everything comes off, so all you have left is your bar. The easiest way to get this on is to get your needle position, move it all the way over to the left. And because what you want to do is you want to put this on your crossbar up here. So it's easy. You don't have to take your screw all the way out, but if you get it out as far as possible before it falls off, it's probably good. So go ahead and slide that in, and it's too hard to change your needle when you have this when you're putting on your ruffler, so it's best just to leave your needle in. So go ahead and put that up on the crossbar. And then slide that bar completely on the shank. You want to make sure that it's flush because you want that, there's very little wiggle room on that needle. So you want to make sure it's completely flush and then tighten it down. And the tighter you get it, the less wiggle you'll get on the ruffler. And you'll know because it works itself a little bit loose as you're using it. So you may have to end up tightening it if you're doing a lot of ruffling. I've already figured that out, that it does tend to loosen. So try to get it as tight as you can on your down bar. Okay, so there's that. It's in my crossbar. You've got to put your foot down. Another variable on these stitches is also your stitch length. So let's go ahead and move our needle back into the middle position so we don't forget and we end up sewing and breaking a needle. So always, your first one you want to do is always make sure your needle's in the middle position. So your next one is your stitch length. So if I was on number, say I wanted to ruffle every six stitches, the longer my stitches, the further apart my ruffles are going to be. Same thing on, even if you're doing a ruffle every stitch, your length will determine the size of your stitches between each ruffle. So let's go ahead and just go with a regular 3.5 millimeter stitch, and let's try to sew something. First thing I'll do is I'll show you how to do the organza. I've got this set for, I've got this cut at 2.5 inches. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to feed it with the glitter on top so I don't make a real mess on the machine. I'm not going to use the, I want this in the middle of the machine, so I'm not going to use that feed guide because I want to try and get this as even as possible. So all I'm going to do is insert my fabric and try to line up that organza to be right in the middle of that needle. So when you see me pull that through a little bit, what I'm doing is I'm catching that organza underneath this metal bar so that it catches. So let's go ahead and go down, and when you get the okay on your machine to sew, it's okay to sew. Make sure you have enough thread coming out on your first stitch, because if your thread gets unthreaded, it's kind of difficult to rethread. So the only option I have here is there's a bar across here. I don't know if you can see it, but my organza is almost flush with that bar on the other side, so I have like an inch leeway there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and keep as much, I'm going to keep a loose tension on this fabric, and I'm going to feed it through as I sew. So I'm in the middle position. I'm using a 3.5 millimeter stitch. I'm using my number 1, so I'll get a ruffle every single stitch, and I'm going to get the biggest, tightest ruffle because I've turned my dial all the way to the right. So let's go ahead and start sewing. And all I'm doing with my fingers is holding the organza so it flows evenly through the machine. Sometimes it happens that it catches a little bit, but if it does, just give it a little tug back here and it'll come through. Okay, so cut that off, lift your thing up, and that is the organza. So what I did on my organza, because I did the glitter on top, I folded it this way, and that's where I sewed to the bottom of I folded it in half. So I have an inch on it. If it's not perfect, it doesn't matter because it's going to be folded in half so that you get a lot of ruffles on that bottom skirt. But like I said, with the wetting tool, it's very hard. It's so smooth that that metal bar just does not want to catch on that tool. So that's every single stitch with the organza. Now I've tried using a couple of the ribbons and to feed the ribbons through. This satin ribbon doesn't work because that metal bar just can't catch it. There's nothing to hold on to. But I have tried using it with the grosgrain with limited success. Here is every 6 stitches you get a gather. I couldn't keep it straight enough even when I used that guide bar. So what I did is I took the grosgrain ribbon and I put it underneath, let me get some of this glitter off. I put it underneath the guide bar here and then up and then through the metal catcher bar. Let me see if I can get that to catch without pushing it through. Okay, so let's go to let's just try it and see if I can get it to work with it being in the guide bar. Okay, you can have limited success on this. Let me go to a bigger stitch so it comes out faster. I mean, it comes out wider. You can get some limited success, but every once in a while, even with the grosgrain, it wants to miss a stitch. But it does do a lot of the work for you. So even if you have to add a ruffle here and there, it's not bad for what it'll actually do for you. Okay, so while this is going, let's go ahead and move over to 6. So now you'll hear the clicking noise because I'm only going to get a gather every 6 stitches. So I'm going to go to a smaller stitch. Let me go to 4 millimeter. Hear that clicking noise? So that means this bar is not going to move until every 6th stitch. So there was, okay, let's try it next time. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pleat. Pleat. Okay, so you see the idea between the pleats there? But anyway, that's using your guide bar, and most of your stitches will be on the top of your ribbon or fabric, whatever you're using. I tried doing this where it was even Steven right down the center, and see what I meant about it missing stitches every once in a while, where if you really want that pleated really tight, you probably have to make a few adjustments on there. But you can make even those pleated flowers with it in the tightest pleat possible. Let me see if I can find that one I tried doing right down the center. Okay, I did. Here's one I tried doing right down the center without using the guide bar, just using my fingers as guides. I didn't get it actually as, I got it as close as I could with just using my fingers to move it around, and you can do it. But that's that, and then this was, like I said, every 6 stitches. Okay, so let's go ahead and try lace. So this is just a flat piece of lace. I'm going to go back to my every single, and I'm going to go all the way up to 5 millimeters, so I have a wider stitch. So I'm not going to use my, I'm going to, yeah, I'll use the guide feeder on this one so I can get my gathers at the top of the lace, like I'm making a slip. So because this is lace, I'm going to have to make sure that that catches through. So I'm going to hear a little clicking noise when I get it through that middle bar. Okay, so it's in the right position, it's under the feed. So now when I make my gathers, it should be gathering at the very top of the piece of lace because I'm in that guide down there. So let's give it a try. I think that's it for that one. Okay, so there you go with the, now I have enough lace that I didn't have enough lace the last time to make a ruffle skirt for. Let me get Kyla here. And we'll just put this on top of the other. Oops, I'm sorry. I knew that was going to happen. I hit the camera. Okay. So there you go with, let me see if you can see that. So there you go with the different ruffles. And that's what I meant about having layers of ruffles. See if I can get the other one up underneath there so you can see that too. But look how fast that was. Imagine how long it would take you to do that manually. So there's definitely advantages to this ruffler. It's just a matter of working with it and knowing that it's not going to be perfect every single time. But what you do get, it's worth having. So, and there is a multi-layer lace skirt for Kyla. But anyway, that's the ruffler. Let me see if what else. Okay, I'll do one more, and I'll do it with fabric so you can see how it works with the fabric. This time I'll do every 6 stitches. I'll do a really loose, I'll turn my wheel all the way to the left and do a really loose stitch. And this time I will, I won't use the guide, and I'll show you how that happens where it's all over the place if you don't use the guides. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. 6, a 5 stitch, all the way to the left. Let's see what that looks like. I just caught in my machine. Let me go and see if I can go up. That fabric through. Doesn't want to cooperate. Let's try it again. There it goes. So you can feed it evenly even though you're not in that guide, but you won't, it's kind of hard to get it exactly right. I mean, it is possible, but it does want to shift all over the place. But that's the difference in the noise, because it's that clicking wheel that gives you a stitch every six stitches. Okay, so that was that one. Let's see what that looks like. And that is just a, not a bad, that's with a 5mm stitch with every six inches, every 6 stitches you'll get a stitch. And that's with very small pleats. Do you see how small those pleats are? So if I would have done the same stitch with a tight pleat, with a smaller, a 4mm stitch, let's try it that way and see what happens. Boy, the wind is howling out there. Okay, there, caught. Nope, not quite. Yep, there it goes. Okay, so there is with the tight pleat. See the difference between how big your pleat is now compared to that tiny little pleat we did here? Yeah, where there is that one. There's that tiny pleat, and there is the tightest pleat. Well, it's hard to see, but you can tell there's quite a bit of difference there. So now we've got that every 6 stitches pleated. Well, they're going crazy outside. What the heck is going on? Okay, anyway, there you go. That's the ruffler. So it's worth it, especially if you can get a 50% off coupon. It sure saves time. Not perfect. You're going to lose a stitch every here and there. If your fabric's too smooth, it's not going to feed properly, but it's definitely a time saver. Okay, so I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.